everybody, I'm Wendy Murdoch, and this is Webinars with Wendy. I've been doing a series of webinars during the pandemic to visit with good friends, to learn something, and to just, be able to share some of the really amazing people, horse people that are out there in the world that we often don't get to hear from because either they're hermits like Bob, or their internet connection is poor, or they just are simply busy and don't have the time. So because of the pandemic, it's been a great opportunity to bring these people to you through the series of webinars. And today I am so excited to have Bob Bowker back for our third installment. Just remember, you can see the other two webinars on the Surefoot Equine YouTube channel, and we've turned them into podcasts, and those are available on Podbean. You just go to Podbean, put in Wendy Murdoch, and you can listen to the webinars. Bob's are up there. There's two of them. And we'll add this third one when this one's recorded. So Bob, I'm so glad that we've been able to get this together, and your internet's so steady. It's awesome.
Oh, it's incredible. It's first day, yeah.
Yeah, this is great.
They worked all morning on it, so I was just frustrated.
So Bob, in case someone doesn't know who you are, can you just give us a little intro about how you got involved with horses' feet?
Well, I went to vet school, then I got my PhD in neurobiology, then I did a postdoc in Galveston, Texas, the Marine Biomedical Institute. And then I went to Columbia University for a little stint in New York, but it was too many people there for me. And then we went to Washington State, and that's a little too rural. But I got into the horse, because of the nervous system. And then back in the early 90s, there was issues about innervation of the foot and that sort of stuff, where the nerves were and all that. And I started, then I realized that the anatomy that were in the textbooks was different than in the horse. So I just like, oh, and so that's how it mushroomed. And now since I've been hunkered down as a result of COVID, I finally can have a chance to think and look and see, and it's even more screwed up than what I thought. Look at that. Yeah, she's all right. All right, doesn't matter. Okay. Well, enough of an introduction. So I've been doing this, and I kind of brought everything home with me. I have all my bones and that sort of stuff, my slides, and that's the beauty of the COVID, is we don't go anywhere. So when I don't have anything else to do, I get on my, look at my bones, my scope, and all that sort of stuff, and and I have a chance to think, which is no politics from the university. Can we just move
the camera down just a tiny bit, Bob, because we're staring at the light.
Oh, I'm sorry. How's that?
That's okay. There we go. Great.
Yeah. So this is my computer room. I don't know if you can see it, but we have a log house, and it's nice. So
it's awesome.
Yeah, so it's been here 30 years or so. So I'm ready to go.
Okay. So so I'll just start up with the screen share, and we've already got some questions, but I think I'm going to let you talk for a little bit before we get to the questions.
Okay.
So we can get to kind of get a feel for what your topic is.
Okay.
Today.
So this here, I want to go fast because with this, it's a short time, I guess, on this internet. There's so many questions about long-toed, under-on heels, and most horses are like that. As the more I've looked, you rarely will find a long toe. I mean, a short-toed horse, that's normal. And I don't know what normal is, and what it is. This is a man-made condition, and it's how we trim. And basically, that leads to all navicular, and it makes laminitis worse and all that sort of stuff. We are the culprit. So if you don't shorten the toe, and I'll show you how to do that. And I think I've done that in the past on one of the other webinars. That's when you start to get into all your foot problems. Okay, next slide. Okay, these are the two pictures, same foot. And as a result of, I've been going to Australia for like 10 to 12 years, and we've modified that no hoof, no horse to, if you really know the hoof, the foot really is, you begin to know your horse, and that's kind of what it is. And what you see on the left, on the right is a picture of this foot. It was teenage quarter horse, had navicular clinical signs, and they've been worked on it for a number of years to try to get it sound and all that sort of stuff with the traditional sort of pads and shoes and all that sort of stuff. And basically what you see is the toe is quite long, the heels are underrun, and you see the cornet where it's curved down at the caudal aspect. That to me is kind of, when you see that, you know the frog is not on the ground, and the central sulc is what I always call it. It's on the way to the fetlock.
Yeah, it
means the frog is not working.
Yep.
And that's the beginning of the end, because when you start to see this, and we'll go through this, is when you see this long toe condition, it's not only the hoof wall you're dealing with. If it's there for any length of time, which most of the time it's there for a long time, the coffin bone elongates as a result of this long hoof. And as a result of that, the coffin bone is actually remodeling to increase the length. And that's when you start to get problematic foot. And what you see on the left-hand side is the same foot. It was like 7 or 8 months later. And the one on the right, it was head bobbing lame at a walk. And on the left, a number of months later, you can see that it's much shorter. All the white there is the sole.
Okay.
We had to get it, and it's work in progress. You see the coronet is not quite straight.
Yeah.
But it's getting there.
Yep. Certainly better than this one.
Yes, even though it's the same horse.
Yep.
So it's just, but the one on the left was rideable with no medication, and all that sort of good stuff. Okay. All right. So basically, I've said for a long time now that you all know what the hoof is, and the hoof is like our fingernail, and it's made up of epidermis and that sort of stuff. But basically, it's an exaggeration, but it's a decoration. Okay. So but unfortunately, our husbandry says it's the major loading structure, and that's the problem, because when you load the hoof wall, you are loading basically the hoof wall, but when you start to load the sole preferentially, you start to load different structures, and that's kind of what you want in the foot, because there's no other mammal or marsupial that walks on their fingernail. I've been asking people if they can come up with one. I had some smart aleck students, but they came up with one, but they're reptiles, so it's still different. Okay. Yeah. Next one. So you all know, probably have seen pictures like this, and again, the hoof is like, keratin's really like your fingernail, and has blood supply, which is corium, that's supplying nutrition and all that sort of stuff, and then the bone. And if you really get into the different aspects of it, you have the layers, which is label 1, 2, and 3 across. You've all seen this in textbooks. And basically, the hoof wall is mostly just a protective structure. 70–80% of it's protective, and a small amount is for loading, but it's just but that's basically and so what you're doing when you trim the foot, you are trimming this hoof, this external epidermis, to change the structures on the inside of the foot. And the previous picture, you could actually see that when you started trimming the foot changes, and that's why I've started to say more and more is you want to trim a little bit frequently. Trimming 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks is too long. And so you have to remove a lot of hoof, and the hoof never really recovers from that. But if you trim frequently, 3 or 4 weeks, and just remove a little bit, and you'll get the different structures to change, because that's what's the energy dissipation and the loading structure. Because one benefit of COVID, since I've been hunkered down, the blood flow to the foot most of it is destined to the frog in the back part of the foot. But the way we're trimming, much of it is going towards the toe, and that's the problem. So, okay, I'll leave it at that. So this is a 3-year-old racehorse foot, and you can outside is a hoof wall, and you see that when you have a shoe on, you're actually loading the peripheral parts of you're actually loading most of the weight is going to be on that hoof wall, and you're going to affect the foot differently than if you had more of the bottom part of the foot on the foot. And the other thing is it's very difficult. I've always believed it's very difficult to keep a very symmetrical foot, both medial and lateral, front to back, if you're loading the hoof wall preferentially. That's why there's so many problematic most all the feet I see are long-toed. They really are. So, okay. All right. On this foot here is a feral horse from out west. And if you look at it, you see the frog and the solar surface. You see the hoof wall. There's just a small amount of the hoof that's level with the sole. You see how wide, but it's been worn off around the perimeter of the foot. And this is on a very hard surface, granola, what I call it. And where, put your black arrow where it was. You see where right up where the black arrow is. This is the heels. That is actually on the ground. These are kind of low heels. So they're actually, what's actually touching the ground is that area there and around the perimeter parts of the foot. And when you got a crushed rock, granola type surface or whatever, the solar surface is actually bearing some of the weight itself. Okay. So that's not a bad foot. But the domestic horse, well, this feral horse. So if you put that foot on a hard cement, or that feral horse, it would only be the perimeter part of the foot that's going to be bearing weight. And after a while, that horse would develop problems. Okay. What you have here, this is when I first started out back in the early 90s at the university. I went to the equestrian center, and I took 8 or 9 horses, and as soon as they got done class, they were used every day for 5, 6, 7 hours for teaching. And when as soon as they came off the arena, before they hit the cement walkway, I made an imprint of them, and that's what you have on the left. Okay, and you have around the perimeter part where the dark spot is where they're loading weight, and the central part of the front, that's the part in front of the central sulcus. Then I took a wire brush and cleaned the foot, and that's what you have on the right hand, and did the same imprint. And what you have where the red ring is, the red ink is, that is the hoof wall. Okay, so you see when they're on sand, an arena, or a mixture of sand, whatever, most of the weight is going to be on some aspect of the solar surface. There'll be a small amount on the hoof, but it's very, very small amount of the weight. So it's a little bit different than what most people believe. Okay, okay. And so what this talk is about is how do we get to the long toe, and it's all about us, is how we trim. Okay, and a lot of people, they like to trim, 7, 8, 9 weeks or whatever, which is too long, because I always say they're trying to save money, but they really don't save money because they call the vet more often as the horse gets older. What you have on the left, this is a newborn foal. On the left is stillborn. What you have is you have the hoof wall, and you just have the white area there is the kind of squid-like material, perionychium. This almost looks like an upside down cone. Okay, and what you have on the right hand side is a 3-year-old racehorse foot. So from the left to the right, how does the foot go from an upside down cone on the left to a right side up cone on the right? Okay, it just doesn't grow down from the coronet. You can't get the foot on the right from the one on the left if it just came down from the coronet. I've tried thinking about it for years, but it's you just can't do it. Okay, so the point is, when the foot is growing, it grows in 3 dimensions. It grows in length, width, and depth, and the key is how does it do it? And I feel if you understand how the foot grows, you'll begin to realize, hopefully learn how to trim the foot, and you should be on your way to having a happy horse. Okay. Okay, so this is that problematic foot. Everyone knows the hoof is growing from the hoof wall is growing from the coronet. It grows down, but it also grows in width. It gets bigger in girth, and it's also going to grow from the heels to the toe. So it's growing in 3 directions, as well as the sole is going to grow in depth. So how does it do that? And as a result of what we've learned, how it grows, this is how I figured out what the important structures of the foot are, what should be on the ground, what should not be on there. The one on the right here is just by looking, everyone knows, you see the central sulcus is open at the back, and it's what I call it on the way to the fat lock. The heels there are very small and narrow, and the frog is long. And the worst thing you can do when you trim the foot is to trim the frog, neaten the frog. It's the worst thing you can do. And it's not just, I wasn't the originator of that. Veterinarians and farriers back in the late 1800s believed that. They said, under no conditions do you trim the frog or the sole, even thrush. I'm not there with thrush, but it meant they realized that this part of the foot is the most important part of the foot. So how does it get in these three directions? Okay, and this foot on the left is my navicular horse here. It was shod for a number of years, and then they tried corrective shoeing, then they tried barefoot, and it didn't work. So then they usually, in the past, I've usually been called in when they are drawing up the blue juice. So it's, anyway, okay, next one. Okay, this here on the foot on the left, it doesn't look that bad, except it's one that's got a long sloping toe. When I see that, I know that the hoof wall is long and sloping, but also the coffin bone is long and sloping, which means the biomechanics inside the foot is different. It's problematic, and it's got an underrun heel, but you see some blood along the quarter. And when you flip that over, the one on the left kind of disguised the fact that the horse had chronic bouts of laminitis. You can see the apex of the frog is at the toe, which means the foot has grown all the way from the back towards the front part of the foot. So it's just a, and everyone knows that the hoof wall is kind of, it's not rigid structure. It's not like stainless steel. It's kind of viscoelastic. I always say it's like peanut butter. And if you're a trimmer, if you trim, say, the left front and you go around the left rear, right front, and you come back to the left front, if you have them on a cement or asphalt surface, you'll see that the hoof wall is changing just by the time you go around the foot. So it is like peanut butter. Okay. Yep. Sorry.
So I have other people trying to get into the webinar, and I'm just.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we already know that it grows from cornet to ground surface, but how does it increase in girth? It gets wider. Okay. And if it just came down from the cornet, you could not explain that. Okay. Next one. All right. What you see here is you have, the question is, the one on the left is a foal, and it's got to get to the one on the right. And how does it increase in girth? And just by looking at those feet, and I apologize, I get very critical of feet. It's an old age thing, and I can do it, but all the feet I see, both of them have long toes. And as a result of the long toes, people haven't trimmed, so you have to come inside the white line. And I think I've mentioned that on the previous webinar. You have to shorten the toe, and you shorten the toe by beveling from the solar surface, not from the dorsal wall. And what you're trying to do is just move the breakover from the tip of the hoof wall inside through the white line into the sole. And that will vary depending on how frequent you come and all that sort of stuff. And you can see the central sulcus is open caudally, which means the solar surface is migrating towards the toe. It's the one on the left, it's, excuse me, it's starting to be a long toe, and it's only a fold. So it's just I scream, but internally. I don't, that's why when I'm with people and I see all these horses and that sort of stuff, I don't really say much, because they would shoot me, they'd throw me in a dumpster, and I just I wouldn't be able to leave. Okay, all right. All right, so the question is, how does the upside down cone get to the right side up cone? Okay, that's where we're going, first of all. Next one. All right, and with this here, if you see that right side up cone, if you do a cross section of there on the A, the amount of hoof wall, since it's a smaller circle, it's going to be smaller amount of horn as opposed to distally. There's going to be a larger amount of horn. I'm trying to get people to think a little bit. It's how do you get to the larger circumference distally if everything came down from the sole? You just can't explain it. And if you're having problems with this, a glass of wine helps. And then you can
not
start
the glass,
thinking,
but the wine inside the glass, Bob.
Yeah, put the wine inside the glass, or if you know, use a straw if you want. But what it is the problem with a lot of horse people. They grew up with horses, and they were got used to the drink. They just started drinking from the Kool-Aid at a very young age, and I can't get those ideas, those dogmas out of their system. And I had the advantage. I didn't see a horse until I went to vet school. So
Bob, let me just kind of see if I got this right. I'm going to go back a slide. You're basically saying that when the foal is born, the top of the foot is wider than the bottom. Got that, yeah, right? Yeah. But then we wind up with the bottom of the foot being wider than the top. And so basically the foot is, as it's growing, it's spreading.
Right, increasing in girth. That's kind of ways as you get older, you increase in girth.
Yeah.
Same thing. You stop growing in length, but this occurs throughout the length of the horse, the life of the horse. It's just not as a foal or up to 5 or 6 years of age or whatever. You know, it occurs throughout the length of the life of the horse. And so every time you trim, you're fighting that. You're trying to get the foot back to where it should be.
All right, so back to a smaller circumference at the bottom rather than letting it keep spreading.
Right. Okay. And you're trying to get the foot so it's under the horse.
Right.
If you don't come inside the white line, what it is, the toe gets longer and longer and longer. And I think I have some radiographs later on. When you don't come inside the white line, the fingernail, the hoof wall gets longer. But what it does, it elevates the periosteum. It causes the bone to get longer.
Right.
So all of a sudden, this bone is starting to remodel to the change in the biomechanics. Right. So it gets to be a ski. And that's when you start to get all these problems with the horse's foot. Most of the problems with the horse foot are us. They're man-made. Navicular laminitis is much worse as a result of what we do to the foot.
Yep.
I know there's some genetic problems, but as a veterinarian, I don't think you can make a living if you just did genetic problems with horses.
Oh, Bob, I have to say I've been working on a laminitic horse, and she was really sore when we started these webinars, and she trotted into the barn the other night on a hard surface looking like $1 million.
Yeah, if you know what's in there, you just adapt, you trim to that to get it better. And the horse, and age is not a problem. I mean, granted, things will change much faster when they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age, but they will change when they're 20 to 30.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right. When a foal is born, this is what you see here. In the bottom is the hoof wall, and you have the epidermal lamina. It's just horny. You see all the feathers around. That's the secondary epidermal lamina. The coffin bone is the dorsal part of the slide. What it is, these lamina are, I'll just say it's plus or minus very similar all the way around the foot, because they've only been subjected to the stresses in utero. There's not gravity or loading or anything like that. And once the foal is born, and if it's able to get up and move around, the foot has to adapt. It adapts very quickly because it's being loaded now. All of a sudden you have this 250-pound, 300-pound foal that's walking around. So the foot is going to change quite quickly. Okay. All right. Well, we did, we did a lot of foals when I was first looking at it. What you have here, this has been stained on the bottom, you have the hoof wall and the lamina. What it is we did everything at the toe basically. And what we saw is they're all very homogeneous. And what happened is within a few weeks of being loaded, the lamina will change. And that's, I think, the next slide, you'll start to see that. Okay. What you see here is the hoof wall is on the bottom. You have the dermis where the arrows are. What it is once these foals were started to move around, they were subjected to the environment, but they're also starting to grow in girth. You know, you can't separate just the weight bearing versus the loading. And what you see here is these up in the upper, the reddish colored one, the lamina are kind of straight and narrow, but within 2 or 3, 4 weeks, you start to get these little dimpling at the apex, the tip of the primary epidermal, and what they're doing is the lamina are bifurcating at the toe. And you see a lot of, it's within 3 or 4 weeks, there's a significant increase in the bifurcations at the toe. And what they're doing is they're bifurcating from top to bottom, and so you're getting an increased number of lamina around the perimeter of the foot. Okay. And what you see, if you look at all these, as they get older, at the bottom, you can see the lamina are splitting from apex to all the way down. And the neat thing with this is that if you hold your arms together and you separate them at the elbow, the lamina are going to be on the outside of your hand, your arms. Yep. But what you see very shortly is the lamina will migrate and move in to fill up the inside of the Y.
Oh, okay.
Did you see what? And these lamina in a live horse or in a horse that's been freshly euthanized or dies or whatever, these lamina are not rigid structures. They're like pieces of wet spaghetti. They're bungee cords. Okay. It's when you see some anatomical specimen where the hoof has been dried, the primary epidermal lamina they appear rigid, but they're not rigid normal thing. It's kind of like in the morning when you make a scrambled egg or you have eggs, you break the egg on the fry pan and you carry it across the fry pan and you dribble egg out, and that's all gooey and everything. And if you're kind of lazy and you just go to work and come back, by the time you come back, that egg is dried out. So it goes from liquidy to something that's more substantive.
Just move your camera up a tiny bit, because all we see is from your nose down.
What do you want me to do?
Move your camera up a tiny bit. Perfect.
Is that better? Okay.
There we go.
Okay. I was hoping my cat would come here and sit, but she won't. Okay. So what it is, these lamina, primary and secondary, are very adaptive to the loads, and they're not rigid structures. Okay. And I've always likened it, these secondary epidermal lamina, where you see the purple around the slide there on the right. They're like grocery bags filled with cells. Okay. You go to the grocery store and you take your empty bag and you buy groceries and you come home. That's what it is. And so when these secondaries are filled with cells, they're there for what the foot can use it for. Okay. They're not rigid. My belief, they're not destined. Then their primary function is not to be loading the horse, because they're fragile structures. You see at the apex, those we'll show you in a minute. There is the most immature cells in this whole part of the foot.
So let me see if I understand this right. The laminar material is coming down on the hoof wall, and at the top it's less differentiated. This is the primary epidermal lamina. This here is these lamina, which is, you see there, they're parallel to the ground. Okay. So where the red arrows are, those red arrows are where most of the immature cells are. Okay. They are very next to the coffin bone. They have dermis above that and coffin bone. Okay. Okay. So it's, but they're just reservoirs of cells. And Mother Nature will use those however she can. If there's nothing going wrong, some people have seen that have horses where they've broken off a part of the hoof wall, and it's part of a quarter or whatever. Within a few weeks, that fills in. Right. That filling in is with the cells that have come from these secondaries to fill that gap in. Okay, so from the coffin bone out, then we have this laminar structure that basically, depending on what's going on in the hoof, they're going to adapt to that. Right. They're the loads and what's not. That's why when you start to look at the histology of the hoof wall, everyone thinks they're the same. They're only the same when they're born, because they haven't been subjected to gravity and forces and all that sort of. After the horse has been born, all adult horses, when you start to look, most of the lamina are different. Secondary, because horse A, the left foot has been a little bit different than the right foot. Now they're all a little bit different. They respond to that. When you get, and this is growing down from the coronet in this case, okay? Right. All right. When it gets to the white line, yep, where the sole meets the hoof wall, yep, those secondaries are not wasted. Those secondary epidermal lamina that contain cells are not wasted. They will move across the white line and fill in the white line as well, contribute to the sole. Mother Nature doesn't waste anything. Right.
Okay, so it does, what you have going beyond the hoof wall is just what is called the keratinized part of the epidermis. That's the white part.
Yep.
Like in the stain here, the secondaries are colored blue or purple. It's because they have nuclei. They're live. The white part there, those keratinocytes, those epidermal cells have lost their nuclei between the two purple areas to your you know that white area. That's epidermis has lost their nuclei. That's kind of when you take your fingernail and scrape your skin.
Yeah.
It's dead cells. Or you take the bottom of part of the sole of the horse, you scrape it. The white flaky stuff are keratinocytes without their nuclei.
Okay.
When you lose your nuclei, you're dead.
Right.
Okay. So, but when you have the nuclei, it means these cells can do anything. They migrate, move, or whatever. And that's kind of what's happening here. Okay. Let's go. All right. So this is what we did a long time ago. But what you have, these are just a schematic part of the lamina bifurcating, increasing the girth of the foot. What you have, there are two active sites there, we believe, is the apex and at the bottom. And what's happening at the apex is where a lot of the immature cells are that are going to migrate towards the hoof wall, make the wall thicker.
Yeah.
If you had a shod horse, quite often, as you remove the shoes, the wall gets thicker.
Yep.
It doesn't come down from the corner, it comes from the lamina near the bottom part of the foot. So these cells in this case here, is the dark colored cells there, they are moving, they're migrating because they got the nuclei.
Okay, so we can get wall thickening from the top and from the bottom.
Right. But if you have shoes on, it happens very quick. Go back a little bit more. You hear the racehorse with the shoe on. All right, yeah, right here, or go back one. No, not the other back. Go back the other way.
Forward.
Forward. Right there. If you, yeah, all right. This is what you have on the left. This is a racehorse, and if you scan down the one side of the foot to the other, where the nails are, you can see the nails.
Yep.
That wall there is going to be thicker because it's being stressed, or whatever you want to call it, by the nails. And if you can actually, it varies from horse to horse to horse, but quite often this bottom where the nails are will be thicker all the way around, as opposed to proximal part of the hoof wall. So
because the lamina have divided.
The grocery bag cells in the lamina are migrating out to fill up the void.
Okay.
Okay, I agree with, there's not a lot of cell division below the coronet. I agree with most everyone. I mean, I've seen other cells, but we're talking 1 or 2 cells in a gazillion. It's kind of whoop-de-doo, it's not a big deal. Okay. But that's what the grocery bags are for. They're just cells to use of how the foot is going to be used for. As we keep going. Now, if you're trimming feet, keep going down to where we were. I'll talk here a minute. You've seen, all right, the next one, okay. If you've seen horses with laminitis and they have a pigmented wall,
yeah,
the pigment is due to melanocytes, just like in us. It's skin just like us. And if you follow the pigment when this foot is growing out, and if it's got laminitis and the hoof, the pigment cells will cross over the white line to the sole and then go forward. But usually if you're observant and you have trimmed feet and that sort of stuff, you'll see that. That shows you and the pigment cells are just kind of like an inner tube floating on a stream. It goes wherever the flow of the water is. And so in this case here, it goes where the keratinocytes are moving, migrating. So what it is here, this is just a final increase in girth. You have this fold, you have like 5 or 6 lamina on the inside, and if they all bifurcate, they bifurcate from coronet to ground, and in a short period of time, you can double the number of lamina, but the foot is kind of twice the size too. All right, so you'll have more lamina, same spacing and all that stuff. It would take you 6, 7, 8 months if it grew from the coronet. Mother Nature is she's pretty smart.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. So far, so good. All right. So that's increase in girth.
Let me just see if anybody has, I'm going to stop share for a second because I can't get to this Q&A. and just see if anybody has any questions to this point. That's a different question because there are a couple questions here. All right, is everybody with us? See, when measuring the foot, do you measure the apex of the frog to the white line or the wall, the front of the wall?
I measure to the tip of the wall, because on a foot that's flat on the ground and the hoof wall is the front part, the front edge of the hoof would be the breakover.
Mm-hmm.
And and if you got a long toe, that's kind of the horse is walking on a ski.
Right.
Okay. So if you start to bevel from the solar side, you do a Mustang roll if you simply speak, or through the hoof wall, you bring the breakover back a little bit.
Right.
If you start to trim through the white line very superficially, which I demonstrated before, you can move the breakover back a great distance without really removing a lot of the sole part of the foot. That's the advantage, as opposed to doing it from the dorsal side.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the point of all. Okay.
All right. We've had some questions about sound. Bob sounds fine at my end, so if anybody's having
my bad? Am I bad?
Well, I hear you just fine.
I mumble, but it's just.
But I'm going to go back to screen share here, and I've got somebody struggling to get on, so I'm going to kind of take care of that if I can.
Okay. But this diagram here, this shows how the foot will increase in girth without, and it does it very fast. It's growing. But the same thing always happens is most of the time when these foals are born, the foot is plus or minus symmetrical. And I mean that because, not to offend anybody, but none of us are symmetrical. Okay.
No.
And so everyone talks about the steep and sloping side of the foot, flared side of the foot. That's an environmental thing most of the time. Okay. And it's just, and what you have is, I'll show you, is that the flared part of the foot is going to be a greater part of a circle. There's going to be more laminar on that side of the foot.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's kind of the same thing. There's some basic, what I'm talking about with this foal here growing, it's not just the foal, but those are the basic mechanisms that the horses use to adapt to loading, stresses, shoeing, trimming, that's how it adapts. Those are just basic mechanisms how the foot can respond to injury or whatever. Okay, next one. Okay, so this here is just to show you these are pictures of 3 different feet. And as you look at those, there'll be a steep and flared side, and usually most of the time it's the medial side. Inside is going to be a little bit steeper than the laterals, but a lot of that is just the trimming, how the horse is being moved and all that sort of stuff. And what it is, the biomechanics are different there. Like on the medial side, it's going to be the more perpendicular load on the inside as opposed to the flared side, and the not only the hoof wall, but the bone changes, the frog and the lateral card, everything changes as a result of this loading. So you start to see an abnormal foot. And the same thing here. And the one on, this is a 3-year-old racehorse foot is not a bad foot. It's thereafter it changes how we destroy the foot. And as you can see here, you can see at the bottom half of this hoof wall where it's flared, the wall is bulging out a little bit on this racehorse. Over that wall is thicker, as due to where the nails were. So those extra thickness of the wall, those keratinocytes, have come from the secondary epidermal lamina. They haven't grown down from the coronet.
Okay.
Okay. So again, the lamina there are just grocery bags full of cells, and Mother Nature uses them however she needs. Okay. So when the trimming is very important. So when you trim, you'll alter the loads and stresses, and when you do that, the foot, both hoof wall as well as the internal parts of the foot, will change. Like on this steep and flared side of the foot, if you look at the lateral cartilage, on the lateral cartilage will be on the steep side, will be thicker than it is on the lateral side. So you affect the biomechanics on the inside of the foot, how you trim. Okay.
Okay. Next. Let's get there. There. Okay.
Okay. All right. This I did with Dr. Lisa Lancaster, is we started to count lamina, and basically what we found is the lamina around the foot will be different. It changes from the toe all the way around the quarters, and depending if the foot is flared or steep. And the third part of that is, I think my first talk, I talked about the lateral cartilage, the thickness, and the fibrous tissue, the fascia inside the foot will change if it's being stimulated. When it's being stimulated, it means the back part of the foot can have more support, provide more loading structures and all that sort of stuff. It takes more of the load off the hoof wall. Okay, so what it is, the white lines you see there, they're the same length, and this is a racehorse foot at the toe. And what we did is we counted the lamina across the toe, and as you get off to the midline, the same length, there are fewer lamina there, which means the lamina are going to be a little bit thicker, but also the dermis in between the lamina are going to be graded to carry more blood vessels and all that sort of stuff. And where the 12 o'clock and 10 o'clock refer to a clock on the dial on the clock, the 10 o'clock. Yep. These racehorses all had toe grabs. A horse with toe grabs, the lamina are going to be closer together. Okay, and that's and one step further. Many of you know what the crenna is. The crenna, it's C-R-E-N-A. It's where the two halves of the foot come together. There's a little divot at the toe.
Yep.
Maybe at the end we can go back to the first slide. I showed you those long-toed horses. You'll always see the crenna.
Yep.
And one, the problem with that means when you see the crenna, it means the toe is too long. And two, it means there's a lot of primary epidermal lamina in that crenna, more than adjacent parts of the foot. And that's, when you see more epidermal lamina there, it's going to be a softer horn. And that's why bugs from the barnyard get in there. And that's where seedy toe comes from and all that sort of stuff. It's just due to the anatomy. If you know your anatomy, you know everything. Okay. Okay.
We're trying, Bob. We're trying to learn our anatomy.
Okay. So what it is, if you follow what we did is I think the next slide will show that we followed, we took, let me go one more somewhere. Keep going one more. We'll come back. All right. What we did is we took these 18 3-year-old racehorses and we cut them like a chip of coins. And we've put these needles in at the crenna. We're at the 12 o'clock position. Mm-hmm. And we counted 25 lamina either side of that. And then we went to 50 lamina all the way around the foot. Okay. And what we found is on the flared side of the foot, as you can see this one here, it's going to be flared on the on the right-hand side of the foot. Sure. This is going to be the lateral side. What it means is what you see at the toe here on the right-hand side at the 1 o'clock position, that space there has 50 lamina. And on the left side of the foot, that needle to your right also has 50 lamina, but they're closer together. Mm-hmm. If I got this right here. Yeah, and what it is when they're, what it is when they're closer together, they are stressed. So on this, what you have here at this 11 o'clock position, there are more lamina there because the space on the right-hand side from 1 to 2 o'clock, they're further apart. It's got 50 lamina there. Okay. And as you follow it around down to the bottom, you got between those last two needles, you'll have 50 lamina on the right, but you'll have 50 lamina on the left there. And that's on the left-hand side is the steep part of the foot. If I got this right. Okay, yeah, so steep part of the foot. And on the right, the lamina are closer together. You still got 50 lamina. And when they're closer together, you're going to have less blood supply and all that sort of.
Okay, so let me see if I got this right. You looked at, you put needles in every 50 lamina?
Every 50 lamina beyond the 12 o'clock position.
Right, so it's 50 lamina between 12 o'clock and 1, 50 lamina between 1 and 2, 50 lamina, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
but our needles are getting further apart on the steep side.
They're getting further apart on the steep side because there's more tissue in between it.
Got it.
More tissue, the primary is going to be thicker, and there's going to be more blood vessels there.
Got it. And that was the steep side of the foot. So there's lamina further apart. There's more tissue and more blood.
Right.
Left side was the flare. There's
on the flared side, things are stressed, so things are going to be closer together. It's like a callus.
Got it.
Okay. And so what you have here, and this is a foot, everyone who trims, it's the problematic parts of the foot is the underrun heel.
Yep.
And the diagonal across it. What you have here, you have this at 5 o'clock position on the right-hand side and the 11 o'clock position on the left-hand side. Those are the problem parts of the foot where the lamina are closer together.
Okay.
Okay. Now, you can go back up again, see the other side. And so when you get a glass of wine, you can ask the person across from you, if you have, when the lamina are closer together, why is it that we need to have the lamina being the primary supporting structure of the foot? I never get a good answer, but that's something. Do it among friends, okay? Okay. So what you see here at the toe, you can actually see the line to lamina there, and you have the dermis, and the white area there is below that is the bone.
Wait,
on this top
are we
picture.
talking about the center picture, the drawing?
Center picture.
Okay.
Of the real life picture, okay? And to the left there, it's off at the 10 and 2 o'clock period.
Yep.
Is you could, if you follow the lamina along that arc,
yep.
somewhere where the red arrow is, it starts to change. Just move, if you move your eyes back, you'll see it starts to, they get further apart.
Correct.
Because the loading forces.
And here it's further apart.
They're further apart between the red arrow and the top.
Here,
of
this
the picture. The lamina are closer together.
Correct. Okay, good.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so what it means when they're closer together, you're going to have, they're going to be thinner, and there's going to be less blood supply supporting it and all that sort of. That's kind of my rationale.
So these wider, thicker lamina have more blood supply. They're healthier.
They're healthier, and they can do whatever they need to do. Support some of the weight. They don't support all the weight. When you have a horse that's supporting all the weight, there's going to be more stress there, and that's why I think the epidermis is like a callus. When you go to chop wood, you get a callus.
Right.
That's what happens with these lamina. Now, when you put a nail in or whatever, you can always see, or a clip.
Yep.
You can the lamina are going to be closer together where you see the clips. It's a stressed part of the foot.
So when the foot is stressed, it starts to put the lamina closer together, and that's where you can tell the stress points are.
That's going to be, yeah, whether it's clinically relevant, that will vary from foot to foot too, but there's a stress part of it. So I want my horse where the lamina are not concentrated at the toe, but they're spread around.
Right. Okay.
And most of the time they're concentrated at the toe significantly compared to the other parts of the foot, because one, you got a long toe. You got a ski as opposed to a short, but also if you got toe clips and all that sort of stuff. And to go back to the webinar we did for the first time, the back part of the foot, the lateral cartilage, frog, and that sort of stuff has been atrophied. So that's why they're going to put more weight on that foot at the toe as opposed to the back part. When you have a big frog that's healthy, all this sort of stuff, you don't see the increased density of lamina at the toe.
Okay, so if we were talking about the absolutely ideal world, we would see that the lamina was perfectly evenly distributed with nice spacing all the way around the foot.
Most of the way, all the way around the foot, yeah.
Yep, but we just, that's would be an absolutely ideal world. And of course there are stresses, and not everybody's foot is perfectly symmetrical.
But the more stresses, that's where the foot starts to adapt and change. Yeah.
Got it.
The foot is always adapting. It's throughout the life of the horse. You got a 40-year-old horse and trim it, that foot will change.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Next.
Yeah. All right. So this is kind of what we did, which I just showed you, just restated since I'm paying attention now, is we took these feet, we did 18 racehorse feet, 3-year-old racehorse feet, same state and all that sort of stuff. And we marked them at 50 lamina all the way around. And we found where the lamina were closer together, or at the toe, and on the flared side of the feet, they were closer together. at the 1 and 2 o'clock position. The diagonal opposite there are closer together.
Yep.
That's the underrun. The lower right here is the underrun heel. And those are the problem parts of the foot.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. Keep going. And this is kind of the same thing. You can see where the arrow, the lines are, there's the same number of laminar, and you can see there's a big difference.
Right.
There. When they're close together, they're the steeper. Because again, from my perspective, when they're laminar closer together, it's like 2 sheets of paper. And when they're closer together, the blood supply has to go all the way down the length of the paper. So it has less blood supply supplying the cells along the lamina. And we're setting the horse up for a bout of laminitis. It's going to be worse than a shod horse.
Okay, so so this is the steep part of the foot on the one on the left.
It's just been flipped over. I think it's the same foot, just been flipped over.
Okay. That helps me. Yeah, I was like a little confused.
Where the steep is, they're going to be further apart. Compared to where the steep is, compare that between the 2 brownish needles. They're closer together on the left.
Yep.
And what you see here on the left, down at the heels, the last 2 needles are further apart compared to the ones on the right.
Yep. Okay. Moving on.
But that's the environment, and this is just all. The next one's just all the statistics and The next, what you have here.
Let me just see if there's any questions here that are. Nope, they've sorted it out. They were talking about kind of okay.
Yeah, where the toe is, they're closer together at the lateral part, and they're going to be the heel are going to be significantly closer together on the underrun heel. Just what the other thing said.
Okay.
I did this 20 years ago, so it's a little slow. Okay, so this here, not only does the hoof wall change, but the underlying bone changes depending on how it's being loaded. What you have here, this is just you can do with modeling, is the different colors of bone density. The purple there is the least dense bone in this coffin bone. The red is the most dense, okay? And what you had here,
right, just to point it out for those people that were asking.
The purple there, that's where there was a toe clip.
Oh.
Okay, that's going to be the least, and on the left-hand side is purple there, that's the lateral side of the coffin bone.
Okay, so this is the right front coffin bone.
Yes.
Okay.
And on the right front, on the lateral quarter is going to be where the lamina are going to be most dense because they're stressed. But the bone is just you have to think about it as opposed to just memorizing it. But it's where any sort of pressure you put on that hoof, it'll change the underlying bone.
So in a way, is the lamina getting closer together because it's trying to make up for bone that's thinner and less strong?
I've never got that far. I haven't drunk that much wine yet.
Okay.
All that. But I mean, that's what you could argue. But again, if you start to unload the wall, relieve the stresses here, the bone will start to get better. It'll start to get denser.
Right.
And
the lamina will start to get further apart.
Yeah. It'll take time, but the bone is the most important thing, because the other thing with this, if I've had 43-year-old racing quarter horses, all from one state, 5 racetracks. And so it's a very homogeneous population in terms of racehorse feet, okay?
It got really close to your mic and it got fuzzy.
Okay, is that better? Okay. After a while, I get excited and I start to mumble. But
I know.
Basically, these 43-year-old racing quarter horses are a very homogeneous population. And then as I looked at all my other quarter horses' feet, the bone started to be different. And what it was is the toes got longer from 2 different points. Okay, and what it was from where the DDFT attached to the tip of the coffin bone, they were, I'll just say 30 millimeters in like these 3-year-old racing quarter horses. Thereafter, up to when you got to a teenager or older, that same distance from the DDFT to the tip of the coffin bone was between 40 and 50 millimeters versus 30. It's a lot. And so what it was over the years, the biomechanics of that foot changed. And also the bone density of those older horses got worse and worse and worse. That's when you start to get, about 40, they were all navicular. Okay.
Yep.
And so this starts to occur very young at age. It's how we trim. I can't emphasize that enough. It's not a genetic disease. It's how we trim.
So I have a question here, and I'll just ask it now. And if it's something you're going to talk about later, then we'll leave it. But the question is, why does my barefoot horse's sole get a lip or swell on the toe from 10 to 2 inside the white line, and how should I address it?
I would say once you got a long toe, okay, and basically what that is once I've looked, if I'm looking at seen most of them, it's kind of, that's where the foot wants to have the breakover. Okay, a lot of people think you can't trim those because they trim it off initially, remove it at once, and then the horse is kind of uncomfortable. But if you rasp that solar ridge or crescent-shaped area with a rasp to the level of the hoof wall, then come back a week later and rasp a little bit more. After 2 or 3 times, you can reduce that to eliminate, and then start to trim into that point. That's where breakover wants to be. Does that make sense?
Called a toe callus, is that
toe
right?
Toe callus, yes, fine. Yeah.
Okay. I've got another question I'm going to ask you while we're taking a little break. During your previous talks, you talked about not touching the sole when trimming and only rasping the toe such that the sole can maintain contact with the ground. What are your thoughts about a hoof that's very flat or even convex as opposed to concave?
There's something wrong with it. It's the convex is kind of it's a happy foot. It's sore.
She's not saying whether it's sore or not, but like
okay.
my horse is very flat in his sole and he's been sole sore.
If it's been, all right, the bone inside is changing at the same time. So the bone has become more flat itself. How is the frog?
He's not sore, she says.
Okay, how is the frog?
How's the frog? Just type it in the chat.
Big, small, atrophied, or does it have one?
She hasn't typed in yet. Oh, he's not sore. He's a frog that's big and wide. And that's kind of like my horse, Allie's got a big fat frog, but not a very much cup to his sole.
I don't see very many of those. But the frog, okay, but the frog should be kissing the ground. You shouldn't have any pressure on the frog. That's a question to you.
Well, he's barefoot, yes, and so he, you know.
Okay.
His frog's always, whenever I've had him where he can leave an imprint, there's always an imprint of his frog.
It should kiss the ground. It doesn't like pressure.
So this frog is not closed at the heel, she's saying.
The foot is too long then.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so you somehow, by beveling those underneath the sole at the toe between tendon, if you can gradually get that toe back, and you'll see you get the toe back, but at the same you got to bring the heels back. You'll see that frog will come forward, and that's going to take over more of the support and all that sort of stuff. Not the frog, but the blood vessels inside, the fascia inside is going to do it.
Right. Okay. About our radius professor. Right. I have somebody has a question in the Q&A. Let me just check that one. I'm having trouble getting to the Q&A when I've got the screen share on. So let me just stop the share for a second. All right, we're going to ask these questions and then we'll go on. We'll just kind of a little Q&A break. When you talk about the destruction of the inner structures of the foot due to vibration, are you referring to vibration from metal shoes exclusively, or vibration in general from the ground, hard ground, etc.? It's
from everything, but all of the vibration is going to be greater if you have metal shoes on asphalt cement versus metal shoes on sand. So there'll be a range, but the more, I believe it's all the vibration that's doing it, because they've shown that, like carpal tunnel syndrome and that sort of stuff, a lot of it's vibration.
So how do you feel about the vibrating plates that they stand horses on?
It depends on the frequency.
Okay.
When it's low frequency stuff is therapeutic, it causes vessels to dilate, but I forget exactly when you get above, it's been a while, 500 hertz or something, 400 hertz or something like that. That's when they've shown that causes constriction of the vessels.
You get the opposite effect.
You get the opposite. And that's what happens with construction. What I learned when I first went to Sweden 6 or 7 years ago, construction workers, they had a law that had already work healthy edicts. They said that construction workers could only use a jackhammer for no more than 30 minutes a day. This was 5 or 6 years ago.
Wow.
Because they're aware what the vibration would do to the vessels in the hands and wrists. 2 years ago when I went there, it had been reduced to 15 minutes.
Wow.
So they're and that's kind of what a lot of the stuff is. And that's what happens with and so they've shown experimentally, if you vibrate, they use a rat tail as their model because there's a single artery that goes the length of the tail. If you subject that to 15 minutes, I think it is exposure of that, I think it's 400 hertz. Don't quote me on that, but it's not very much. That rat tail, 15-second exposure with that 400 hertz, that rat tail will remain constricted. The artery will remain constricted for 3 days.
Wow.
So and they've shown with horses with shoes on cement or asphalt, their vibration is like 2,500 to 300, 3,000 hertz. Wow. So it's there, and so it does damage.
Okay, next question. Are you familiar with the radius rasp? As an owner who will probably never master a standard rasp to bring back the toe just a bit between farrier visits, she's talking about a radius rasp. I don't know that I know what that is.
I assume it's some sort of curvature.
Yeah.
That's no.
There is one that I had that kind of goes around, so you can put that Mustang roll on. That may be.
But again, what I've learned as the last 5 or 6 years without these navicular horses I've been doing is if you bevel, like say between 10 and 2 or a little bit more, every few days, just to shorten, get inside the white line, and then once you do that, you go through the white line. You're only taking a fraction of a millimeter,
right?
But you'll begin to shorten the toe, and you'll see the frog increase in size, and the central sulcus come back on the ground.
Yeah, she says it goes around the edge horizontally, but basically anything that's going to take that toe back between 10 and 2, you're saying is a good thing as maintenance, kind of like filing our fingernails.
Your fingernails, yeah. And you'll see you're doing good is that the central sulcus will start to close and it's coming forward.
Right.
And the point of all this is that why you shouldn't touch the frog is the tubules inside the frog in front of the central sulcus. Okay. They are 2-3 times greater in diameter than tubules of atrophied horses. Frogs of atrophied horses, not atrophied, you know what I mean? Yep. Atrophied frogs of other horses, or the ones that are on the ground. Okay, and they're full of small microvessels. So far, so good. So if you remember when you're in school, the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared times the height.
Yep.
Okay. And what it is, the pi r squared is a critical thing. There'll be 9 to 15 times more blood going through those frogs that are on the ground that are large than the ones that aren't on the ground. And that's what's dissipating the energy.
So we could almost think of the frog as like a heart, and you've got to make sure it's getting sufficient blood through that heart of a frog to supply the foot.
Okay.
And,
well, all right. Mother Nature's designed that foot so most of the blood flow is going through the frog.
Right.
However, but humanoids have gotten into it. So we don't trim the inside. We don't trim the foot so it's inside the white line. Too many people neaten the frog. We make it smaller, so the tubules get smaller in diameter and that sort of. So our ways of supporting the foot, internal parts of the foot, and all that sort of are getting reduced with the frog, because that frog, when it's large, is directly underneath the navicular apparatus.
Right. Okay, next question, and then we're going to go back to your slideshow. Why is the sole of my horse around the toe area growing oh wait, we did that one, never mind. I do have one other one though. Somebody's asking about power tools on hooves. Some people are using grinders now. to do
If
trimming?
you're good, okay. I don't know.
Because it's not.
It's hard work. I agree. It's hard work, especially if you do it for a living.
Yeah. And we'll get to the other. Okay.
You just got to pay attention to what you're doing. Yeah.
Yep. Now I've gotten very fit trimming 3 horses. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
They're in good
All
shape.
right. So, but this coloration here will vary from bone to bone to bone to bone, depending on how the foot is being loaded. Okay. And the younger foot, the red area, the extensor process is very dense in bone, and you want the back part of the bone to be red, as opposed to the way it is. Because this means here, this bone is getting longer and longer, but this is only a 3-year-old racehorse, so it's young. It's going down the tube fast.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. All right, radiographs. This is kind of how it is. This is, you've all seen this before. You know where P1, P2, P3 is in the navicular horse. You follow the dorsal cortex of the coffin bone, black hair going. You see the very tip. You see a little slipper toe. Yep. That is because the hoof wall has been long. It's longer than normal. People are afraid to come inside the white line. So when it gets to a certain point, it starts to elevate the periosteum off the coffin bone. Okay. And unbeknownst to us, as soon as it's elevated, bone fills in underneath that elevated periosteum. So if you take a radiograph today, you'll see the slipper toe. Then you come back in January of next year and take another radio, you won't see the slipper toe. What has happened is the bone has filled in underneath it. So that coffin bone has gotten longer. But what is happening, all the rest of the bone is remodeling to that increased length. It's like going from a short stubby ski to a foot longer ski. Mm-hmm. And if you keep doing that over the years, that's when you get these, what I've mentioned, these 3-year-old racing quarter horses where the DDFT attaches to the coffin bone, and from there to the tip of the coffin bone, it's 30 millimeters, plus or minus a fraction of a millimeter, in these 3-year-old racing quarter horses.
So if I was to put that on the X-ray, the DDFT, is that attaching where my arrow is right now?
No, keep coming down. There's where my thumb is, my finger. Keep going to your left.
My left.
Just a little bit right in there. That's where the DDFT would attach. That's the semi-lunar line.
Oh, okay.
So from there to the tip of the coffin bone, it's 30 plus or minus fraction of a millimeter in these 40 feet. Very homogeneous. Okay. From there after, as the horse ages, it will vary, but it'll get up to 40 and 50 millimeters from that same point. But they're the same size foot. Okay, it's not a big foot, but it's the same size foot because they're all quarter horses I've been measuring. So, and then all of a sudden, when it gets to be a long-toed coffin bone, they're all navicular horses. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, keep going. So I've done some. All right. So what you see here, you see the one on the left. You see the slipper toe is there, mm-hmm. And it's the same thing here. It's a different foot, I think. Keep going. And what you see here, this is just highlighting it up more. And you see on the right-hand side, it's very fairly dense bone, but you see the slipper toe.
Yep.
And what you see on the left one here, and it's more fuzzy.
Yeah.
Because bone is being laid down. Okay, so then what it is, so if you drew a line from where that tip is up to above where the squares are, that is where the periosteum is. And what's going to happen is underneath that black line, it's a black line. It's not going to be. It's going to be a straight line from the tip of the bone up to where the black line crosses the bone.
Okay.
That's going to fill in with bone. So the real toe is going to be longer.
Got it.
And what happens is that changes all the structure of the inside of the bone. So that starts to remodeling. Instead of being very dense and strong, it starts to become osteoporotic. Because it's
more
the load is being
the same amount of bone becomes more porous, weaker bone.
Yeah, this becomes weaker because the load is going out towards the toe, so it's not being reinforced. Exercise is the word. All right, I think I have another one here.
Oh, okay.
And this is kind of what I was just where the red line is here. I'm sorry, it was red. Where the red line, that is going to fill in with bone. So a year and a half, when you take a radiograph, you look at, you don't see the slipper toe. You think things have gotten better, but what it is, things have gotten worse because the bone has been filled in. The bone is regrown, hasn't grown in width, but the trabecular inside the bone has gotten smaller, thinner, greater spaces. It's setting the foot up for problems, whatever comes down the road.
Right.
Okay. All right. This here is just an example. These are 3-year-old racing quarter horse on the right, and this here is another older quarter. I forget what it is. 15-year-old on the left. With a neat, good thing with PowerPoint, those red lines are the same angle and that sort of stuff. You can just take it from one to the other. You see how that toe is increased in length.
Yeah.
On the left hand, and it varies from foot to hood depending on who's trimming.
Yep.
If you got someone who's trimming inside the white line and all that sort of stuff, it will stay closer to this one on the right, as opposed to the one on the left. Those people, when you have shoes on, the problem with the shoes is the trimming in the time interval between changing the shoes gets longer and longer and longer. So the toes get longer and longer and longer faster.
Right.
It's us. Okay. But you can keep the one on the left, you can keep the foot on the right if you want to change it short intervals. I've only seen 4 horses that way with shoes. They're in their 20s.
Wow.
This is where you need a glass of wine, all right? So you have to think, because we have to change how we trim these feet.
Right.
And a lot of these problems that we see clinically are man-made. Okay, keep going. All right. Now, how does a hoof wall get thicker? As I mentioned, it grows in length, proximal to distal, and we're talking about the girth of the foot, the bifurcating lamina, and all that sort of stuff. Now, where everyone knows that in a foal foot, it's very thin at the toe as opposed to up, but everyone thinks it's just growing down. Okay, and if it just grew down, you'd have say a thin point. The hoof wall will be thinner and say in the distal half of the coffin bone and be thicker at the proximal half. Mm-hmm. Everyone thinks that thick part is just going to grow down where the thin part is. But the problem with that is that's going to take, say, 6 months to do. The horse is going to gain weight, and it means that the distal part of that hoof, bottom part of the hoof, is going to be overloaded with an increase in weight and all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't happen that way. Okay. But we don't see it, okay? So what I'm going to show you is that, going back to the lamina now, I mentioned the bifurcating and all that sort of stuff. The cells, the secondaries are just grocery bags filled with cells. They're going to make that wall thicker before, within 6 to 8 months, okay? Okay. The next one, all right. So this is just skin, just basic biology. This is a pad of a dog or human, or soles of our feet or palms of our hands, where the superficial part of the skin is very thick. And it's thick because it has friction and rubbing off and that sort of stuff. And what we have where the purple is, you see the purple, it's just like with the hoof, there's more nuclei that are there. When there's more nuclei, these cells are alive and they can move and migrate and divide and all that sort of stuff. And where we have our soles and palms, our dog pads, kitty pads and all that sort of stuff, it's a greater surface area, so these cells can divide and fill this up and make this thicker without having it gets thicker so it can be worn off before without changing the rate of cell division. I didn't say that right. But if you didn't have these little increased surface area at the bottom, where the SB is, SS, where they didn't have those, you'd have to have a very high rate of cell division along where the germinal cells were formed. This is how Mother Nature is modified that. It just increased the surface area. So when it gets up here, it'll slowly wear the hoof pad off of our palms of our hands, soles of our feet. The horse's foot does the same thing. Okay? Okay. I can't remember what the next one is. Yep. We'll find out. All right. This is just a high power, but you can see all the blue there. That's all nuclei. And so these cells are dividing. They're moving up the blue. And when they get to the light reddish area, they've lost their nuclei. And so then they can be scraped off. They're dead cells. Once you lose a nuclei, you're dead. Okay. So,
okay, so this area here, these guys are multiplying and they're moving up, and then this is your callus up here, and it's
right.
thicker because it's got an increased amount of wear. So it just
Okay.
makes
That's a palms of our hands. It's callus, dog pads, kitty cat pad. But if you didn't have this increased surface area or these peaks of cells growing down, developing into the tissue and growing up, you'd have to, the only way to do that is to have along where the border is cells that rapidly divided. Then you get into cancer. That's what cancer is. Cells are rapidly divided and that sort of stuff, okay?
So basically, because you have these fingers down here, you have more cells with nuclei that can produce more cells to—
A greater surface, there are more cells, yeah, okay?
Okay,
The same thing happens in the horse's foot, that's what I'm trying to get at.
well, I'm thinking it's starting to look like lamina.
Well, that's good, okay. You can have your, reward you with a glass of wine when we're done, okay?
Okay.
Okay, all right. All right, the same thing happens with the horse's foot. The difference is these white lines I'm going to show you four different levels. The lamina there are, where the secondaries are, the one function of lamina is opposed to the previous slide of palms of our hands, soles of our feet, dog pads, cat pads, is you need to produce tubules.
Yep.
In the horses. And what it is, the tubules are important. They're not iron bars and cement, because if some of you have worked with horse feet, trim them and that sort of stuff, if you have an opportunity to come across a dead foal foot,
Yep.
okay, just put it in water and watch it. You'll see the tubules will actually float off after a couple of days or so, and they're like wet pieces of spaghetti.
Wow.
They're not iron bars. They're not rigid structures.
Right.
They're only rigid structures when they dry out again. Okay,
Right.
That's what I mentioned before. Okay, all right. So I think the next, yeah. So what you have here on the left, you have a foal foot, and you have this one that's cut. And if you took sections at A, B, and C on the left, what you'd expect histology, you'd have it's thicker at A, so you expect maybe you have primary epidermal lamina that are longer. The hoof wall would be thicker. At B, it'd be intermediate, and at C, you'd have a very thin wall and short lamina. That's what you would expect, right?
Right.
That's also what you get, okay? However, what you see down here at the bottom in C, you see there's more darker colors. Yep. More reddish as opposed to proximal. They're saying differently, but that's kind of, but you see there's more around the secondary epidermal lamina as opposed to the proximal part of it. What's going to happen, the grocery bags that are down here in C still have their cells. What I'm going to show you is these cells are going to come out of the secondaries and they're going to go towards the hoof wall.
Okay.
They're going to make the hoof wall thicker. And compared to A, it's already happened at A. And that whole process is moving down the foot.
So these grocery bags you're talking about, the secondaries, they're there at A, but they're not needed?
The wall is already thick. You've emptied your grocery bag. You've come home and you've emptied your grocery bag. And here, what it is, the grocery bags are going down through B, and when you get to C, they haven't been used yet. So you just got home and your grocery bag, you haven't emptied it. That's why the wall is thinner.
Got it.
And if this, to go one step further, if this all happened at the cornet coming down, you'd have this ridge coming down the hoof wall, and you don't see that.
Right.
Okay. It's all happening on the inside of the foot, which you don't see.
Okay.
Okay. All right. All right. These next four slides are the same lamina from proximal to distal. What you see here, this is proximal under the microscope. What you see, all the purple there are nuclei. Right. And what it is there are a fair number of nuclei, but the cytoplasm of the cell is extremely small. They're immature cells. Okay. Okay. And so what's happening as they go down from proximal to distal, the maturity of these cells start to increase. They'll become more mature, so they get bigger. Okay. Okay. All right. And I'm going to show you, and you go back one. All right. You see the little white lines in the middle of that lamina?
Where my pointer is?
Dorsal. Go towards the top. And go down. In the middle of this primary epidermal lamina, You see those white lines?
Yeah.
Okay. Those there, I use their histological markers of the age of the cells, basically.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And I use them just to show you they're older cells than the ones where you see all purple there.
Okay.
Okay. And so that will come up later. Okay.
Okay.
Go one more. So the next slide is the next one down is 4 or 5 millimeters further distally than the proximal one. And you see they're differently shaped.
Yeah.
Because what it is, the cells will start to increase in size compared to what it was in the first. And what's going to happen, they will, the grocery bag on the top is upside down on the bottom there, it's right side up. So these purple areas that are nuclei, they're going to migrate up to the middle of that, and they're going to go towards the hoof wall.
Okay.
Okay. And what's going to happen, and if you look on the left-hand side, you see the shape of the lamina. They're specifically distinct, because on the next slide, you'll see it's the same lamina, but see, it's bigger.
Yeah.
Go back, just go back and go back one more. See, this is the same lamina, same magnification. It's at 40x. It's been magnified 400. And go one more and see, it's the same. It's 4 or 5 millimeters further distally. So these cells are starting to mature. They get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And this one here, they're even bigger here. This is that section. So these cells are going to start to come out into the center of that, and they're going to go towards the hoof wall.
Okay.
So the wall is actually, it's kind of like if you had a room and you started putting up 4 pieces of plywood 4x8.
Yep.
And your partner was on the outside looking in, but you could fill up that entire room, make it solid, and the one on the outside wouldn't know exactly anything of what's going on. And that's what happens with a hoof wall. All these cells are going to be made thicker. And it's going to make the hoof wall thicker. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It takes a while to think in, okay?
Yeah, it does. I'm going to have to chew on this one for a while, I'm sure.
Right. To go one more, there's one more section here. See, this, just flip back and forth, and you see this bottom one, D, is even.
So this is the same magnification that you're.
Same magnification, the same epidermal lamina from proximal to distal.
And it's just getting bigger and bigger as we're going down.
Right, because the cells are getting gone, say, from a size of a dime to a size of a basketball.
So they're essentially maturing as they're going down.
Right. There may be an increase in number of cells, but most of it is an increase in maturity. So the maturation process is going proximal to distal. And once they matured, they are going to the hoof wall.
Okay, so here we have a bunch of immature cells up at the top.
The purple there are just nuclei, and you don't really see any side of it because they're so thin, they're so small.
Right, and then as the wall is growing progressively down, these cells are maturing, and as they're maturing, they're getting bigger.
Bigger.
They're getting bigger. That's helping increase the wall thickness.
And once they're getting mature and bigger, then they're going to migrate to the hoof.
Got it.
Leave the lamina and go back, keep going back. Go upward, one more, next one. This one here, that's why you see on the C, the lamina are shorter than they were at A.
Yes.
Because what it is the hoof wall has gotten very thick here at A.
Yep.
It's beyond the magnification. And so what's happened here in C, you have mostly hoof wall there, but it's very short lamina, and it's really short thickness. So the wall is thin here. But as they get mature and everything like that, the wall is going to get very thick, and the lamina are going to get longer, because not only is the wall going to think of it, the lamina are growing towards the hoof wall, the coffin bone at the same time. So that's how the foot is getting bigger, but it's not growing down from the coronet. They're produced at the coronet, they're filled with grocery bags, and it's migrating down. Then the process occurs at each level, so it's going down the foot.
Okay, I got it. I think I got it. Like I said,
that takes some time to think, but again, with all that is what happens when you have problems with the foot. These are just basic mechanisms of these cells to migrate around the keratinocytes. When they have the nuclei, they can migrate. Right. If they don't have the nuclei, they're dead. They don't migrate. When you're dead, you don't move.
So that's what they're doing. They're migrating, they're expanding, and they're moving toward the.
That's what makes the wall thicker. Yep.
Right.
Okay, keep going. All right. So this is at a little higher power. On the northeast part of the section is where you have the coffin bone.
Okay.
Southeast, southwest is where the hoof wall is.
Okay.
Okay. I mentioned to you in us pads, kitty cat pads, dog pads, and our fingers, soles, and hands, and everything, we have increased thickness.
Yep.
The horse's hoof has the other necessary thing they have to make are tubules.
Okay.
Tubules are like they're not iron bars in cement. They are there to they're flexible. They're like wet pieces of spaghetti, but they're trying to reduce the intramural stresses on the hoof, inside the hoof.
Okay.
That's why quite often when you have shoes on, quite often just above the shoe where you put nails in, you'll have cracks. Where you have cracks is there's a lot of stress in that where that crack is. So you have to unload that for it to heal.
Right.
Okay. So what you have here is at the on the northeast, you have this apex of the primary epidermal lamina.
Yep.
Immature cells, they're going to mature, get bigger, and then they're going to come out and going to go towards the hoof wall.
Okay.
So they're going to go southwest. As you get down to the southwest, you see the secondary epidermal lamina gets shorter and shorter and shorter in the lamina here. What's happening is it's kind of like on a pool table. You have a rack with pool balls.
Mm-hmm.
The basement membrane is like that rack keeps the pool balls together.
Right.
And if you lift that rack, if you remove the basement or the basement membrane is like a piece of string to me. So what you have in the southwest, you've just pulled tight that basement membrane. So the cells, all same number of cells are there, all under this basement membrane. But without lamina. Does that make sense?
I think I'm going to have to.
All right. In the northwest, you see all these secondaries, the grocery bags.
Yep.
And when you get down to further down to the southwest, you've emptied them all on the table.
Okay.
So the actual purple air is thicker than it is northeast.
Yes.
Because on northeast, they're in grocery bags. You just emptied onto the table.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's why it gets it. And what's happening now, these cells in the southwest here, they're migrating. They're actually going to form tubules.
Okay.
And so if you look at where the cells migrating to the inner hoof wall are, just above that, you'll see two tubules that are forming.
Guide my pointer.
Go towards the yellow line, yellow bar. Tubules, the white area is what you want. Those are tubules. There's one this tubule that's formed. The one to the right of that is almost formed. It's dimpling here between the two.
Yeah.
And the one above that is on its way.
Yeah.
There's going to be a tubule there that's going to form. But what you see is these secondaries are coming down, and as they approach that, the basement membrane is just like a piece of string, becomes straight. So all the cells are emptied onto the table. And that's why you don't have any secondaries where the tubules are.
Okay.
The cells are still there, but they're migrating to actually create the tubule.
Right.
Okay. And what's going to happen? And so what is actually happening, this wall is getting thicker.
Okay.
Okay. So what's happening is
they're becoming tubules.
they are becoming tubules.
Right.
Tubules
and so here where you start to see discreteness, they have become tubule. They've
right.
Right.
And if you go back to the one you just saw, you were right in the center of that, you see there's a small blood vessel.
Yeah.
There's an artery that comes down from the coronet. That's the peach fuzz of the coronet. There's an artery that comes down and the cells come out to envelope it.
Okay.
Okay. And that creates the tubule. Okay.
Make a little balloons around the blood.
So what it is, if you have your ceiling here.
Yeah.
Okay. And you had a coffee can. Say you had a dozen coffee cans that were open on both ends.
Yep.
You put one coffee can on the ceiling.
Yep.
All right. That's a tubule.
Okay.
Part of a tube. And a blood vessel will come through the center of that. Then a little later, you're going to have an addition to that will be another coffee can you put on top of that. So that tubule is growing is in quotes. It's growing down from the cornet, but it's due to the coffee cans coming out from the lamina. Pieces of pipe are added. So eventually you're going to get a pipe from the ceiling to the floor.
So it's going to make that tube. It's making that.
It's making that tube, but it's not making it from cornet to ground. It's making it from the lamina.
So
it's adding a piece of
coming laterally, and the tubes are being formed vertically, and they're the laminar.
Yeah, you're adding a piece of pipe as you go towards the fall.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. Now,
all right.
Now with that, and again, we'll go back to your where we were. All right. So what it is these, you see the southwest area, the less pink color.
Yeah.
So it's once this is formed here, all that pink color is going to disappear because the pink color is due to the nuclei.
Right.
So these cells are going to lose their nuclei and they're going to become white. They're going to become keratinized. What you see on the very southwest part, all that whitish part of the hoof.
Yep.
That is all keratinocytes that have lost their nuclei. So that whole process is making the hoof wall thicker.
Okay. So it's the same thing as the way we make a callus. It's these lamina are coming in, and the tubes are being formed from the top, and the lamina are coming in and kind of chaining together the cans to make the tubules.
Make the tube. And the function of the tubules is to reduce the stresses inside the wall.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Keep going.
Okay. I just want to let you know that I have to be done by 5 of 6. So you have another 15 minutes.
Okay, okay.
Which will be almost
so you see where the black rings are? Okay. Where the black rings are tubules to be, okay?
Okay.
Okay. And where the pink is, those will become primary epidermal lamina.
Okay.
Okay. And again, they're not rigid structures. They're actually flexible. Keep going. We'll get through this. All right. So at the part of the apex, the tip of the lamina close to the bone, it's all immature structures. One of my earlier slides I mentioned, it's a very active sites. That's where the immature cells are. They're mature and they're filling up this primary epidermal lamina, and that's why you get the whiteness there. They're losing their nuclei. It becomes thicker and all that sort of stuff. Okay, keep going. And then you're going to form, you see where those circles are, there's an artery in between. That is an artery that just grows down from the coronet.
Right.
Okay, and they meet up. Two strangers meet in the night, okay?
So you've got a vertical and a horizontal system.
Yeah, okay, keep going. All right, now, see how smart you people are. What it is, fortunately, when I was there, I had wonderful students. And you had like 4 sections, A, B, C, and D. And what I did is I had students take a section, A, B, C, and D, and I had them map out the same tubules on each subsequent section.
Oh, wow.
Yes, they're awesome students. They did it, and I'm ever so grateful to it. Because what it is, when the first one is easy, you just pick them. But the second one, you had to find the same tubules on the first one that you marked.
Right.
And if you did that, once you got, it's like a crossword puzzle or some sort of puzzle. Once you got into it, it got fun to be after a while. Initially, they just cursed me, but they're very nice. All right. And so what it is, you'll see, why I'm doing this is that you can never superimpose the same tubule on a more distal section.
Oh.
Okay. Because they're moving. Remember, everyone knows that the hoof wall is viscoelastic.
Yes.
It's peanut butter and moving, and that's what it is. Because the one tubule there, you could find that, but the adjacent ones to it would never superimpose on the same tubules around it was on the proximal structure, because they're moving inside the hoof.
Right.
Okay. That's why stresses on the wall are very important. When you have horses that have all the weight on the hoof wall, used to have fractures, cracks, and all that sort of stuff. You get a lot of ridges and all that sort of, and most of them are just pressure ridges, because the pressure is too great inside the wall to support the weight of the horse.
Right.
Okay. All right. Keep going. All right. This is a mind bender. What it is on the left is say the section at the red area, and the section on the right is a thinner one distal to that same section. What it is the on the right you have this yellow area blocked off with tubules.
Yeah.
If I get this right now, is again the tubules are being formed from the lamina. Okay, so these tubules that are in this yellow bracketed area here on the right, they're on the left, just directly over it. Okay, the ones marked on the left section in red here, they have been formed, but on the right hand section, they haven't been created yet.
Oh, okay.
Because the lamina are going to be shorter. There's going to be many more cells there. They have to migrate out of their grocery bags to form the tubules. So that's when the wall gets thicker.
Okay.
And if you do a lot of this, see these lamina on the right-hand side, the tubules are going to be closer together because the cells are going to grow and they got to finish maturation. They'll eventually get to what it is on the left-hand side.
Okay.
But this, so these tubules, once they are, this is a creation of the tubules. Once they are created, they do grow down from the corn out like toothpaste when you squeeze toothpaste out of a tube.
Okay.
But they are not created that way. They are created from the lamina.
Wow.
Okay. So far, so good. So far, so good.
I think so.
Okay. It takes a while.
Yeah.
But, okay, go to the next one. We've mentioned the sole. The function of the lamina is to create tubules. In my opinion, not to suspend the horse.
Okay.
I have a bulletproof vest on, so I don't care, okay? Okay, so what it is, these lamina here are sheets of paper where they come together to form a circle. They'll create tubules in the sole. And on the heels, they also, you can actually see them coming together, and they're going to create hoof wall, horn at the heels of the foot. Okay, where your black arrow is here, okay?
Yeah.
And around the hoof wall, those lamina there are producing tubules for the hoof wall.
Yep.
And when you get to the white line, they're producing tubules. The hoof wall tubules are producing tubules that are going to form the outer portions of the sole.
Okay.
All right. All right.
So we've got tubules in the sole, in the wall.
Tubules are everywhere in the foot.
Exactly.
Okay.
That was kind of where I was going.
Okay.
Tubules
Right.
are everywhere, and they're formed from lamina.
You need lamina to produce them, except in the frog. And the purpose of the frog, the tubules that are there, it's a softer horn.
Right.
Okay, they can't, these tubules, since I mentioned to you they're wet spaghetti,
Yeah.
they can't burrow through hard horn. That's how I look at it, they can't burrow, as opposed to the frog.
Okay.
Okay, all right, the next slide. I'm gonna, all right. This here where the black is on the left, that's what you see histologically. On the southeast corner where the bars are, those are the bars. Then you have lamina pointing out towards it. What's going to happen, these around the perimeter of that, you'll have different the secondary, and there's also another branch of I just call them tertiary. They're going to come together to create tubules. These tubules are going to migrate towards the toe and towards the quarters.
Okay.
Okay, and if you've had horses that have lost their hooves as a result of laminitis, the hooves grow in from the bars, the sole grows in from the bars, and they will come down from the coronet.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what they do, and so those. All right, one step further. Those people who, and this is just a higher. Okay, you can go to that one. This is just a high power. You have the epidermal lamina of the primary epidermal lamina of the bars, where you have the circles there are formed by secondaries. They have formed tubules of the sole. They're going to migrate forward as well as to the quarters.
Okay.
That's why when you get remember, this is all about long-toed and sole. The sole is growing. It's like a conveyor belt. It's growing from the heels towards the toe.
Yep.
Okay. Those horses that lose their hooves, the sole will come in from the bars.
Okay.
Okay. And I forget what I was going to say. Okay. I'll go to the next. I can't remember. Okay. So this is kind of a summary. So what's happening here is the diagram there. You have this. You have the hoof wall, and what it is, the arrows coming from it are they're going to make the wall thicker.
Yep.
Okay. They're going to create hoof wall, but also they need to create tubules. That's why it happens. They don't grow. They can't grow down through that hardened hoof, because again, the tubules are like wet spaghetti.
Right.
Okay. And this here, what you see here, these are the A and B are the same laminar. One's proximal and one's distal.
Right.
So the cells. So it's a not much cell division occurs beyond the coronet. I don't have a problem with that. But what happens is once they are formed, they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they start to migrating.
Right.
And once they've migrated to this site, they lose their nuclei and they become the keratinized hoof.
Got it.
And that is continue. Okay, it's the same. It's the same. It's the same thing. All right. So this is an example. Those of you trim, the pigment is just pigmented melanocytes like we have when we go out and get tan or whatever. Is they are between the cells, the keratinocytes, and the melanocytes spit out pigment and is gobbled up by the keratinocytes. And you can use the keratinocytes to show where the growth is actually going. And if you could look at the one on the left and the one on the right, it's the same foot.
Okay.
You see how concentrated I forget the difference is. There's several months difference in the trimming. What you see near the heels, you see the sole pigment. What you see on the right-hand side, see how it's spread out?
Yeah.
Shows you where that sole is migrating.
Okay.
It goes from the bars forward as well as towards the quarters. And it varies over a much longer period of time than coronet down. Oh, this one here, just so someone asked me that sometime. On the one on the right, you see the little bit of reddish at 7 o'clock position.
Yes.
You can follow that around. This horse also had laminitis. You can follow where it's a whiter sole as well as a more yellowish sole.
Yeah.
Where that border is, that's where that horse is breaking over when we've trimmed it. So we've come through the white line as well as the part of the sole. Because we're trying to get the one frog on the left to be like the one on the right. And what is picture, this just happened to shed part of its frog before we do it. But this part of the frog is crucial to the foot. Do not trim the frog. Farriers and Fetzer are saying that late 1800s. Do not trim the frog or the sole under any conditions. Okay. Which I kind of agree with. But you see here, if you, from the apex, on the right-hand side, from the apex of the frog to the tip of the frog is too long. When you see where the breakover is, it's getting close, where the border, it's getting close to where you want it to be.
Yep.
Because that, when you see that, it's because the frog is getting bigger.
Right.
So you know you're doing something right if the frog gets bigger, because the frog is getting bigger without you touching it.
Right.
And when you touch the frog, it gets smaller. Okay, I don't know if I have any more. I can't remember. Oh, they talk about viscoelastic.
Yep.
Sorry, this here, if you put a weight, viscoelastic is like peanut butter, okay? If you put a weight on a branch, take a picture of it and come back a few hours later, the branch will start to get lower and lower and lower because all the tree cell products and everything like that are moving past each other. That's what viscoelastic means. It's peanut butter. And the tubules there prevent the stresses. So they're actually moving with the hoof wall. And I think I have a couple more.
Nope, that's it.
All right.
We're doing good. So let me just see. I know I have a question on the Q&A. With a horse that is foundered and the hoof is remodeled, bone loss, will the bone come back to somewhat normal once the problem has been resolved?
It depends. all right, bone, what it is, it's made up of calcium, which everyone knows, and there's a bone protein. It's kind of like if you had a block of putty, that's the bone protein, and you put M&Ms, those are the calcium products. Mm-hmm. If you embedded that into the bone, that would make a strong bone. Mm-hmm. Now, if you start to lose the calcium, and that's all you've lost, and once you get stronger, the bone will come back to be its normal shape. However, if you start to lose, with laminitis, if you start to lose some of the bone protein, that won't be replaced, because your putty or whatever is gone.
Okay. So. Someone's looking for a book or a manual on how to trim to the white line step by step. Do you know of such a book?
There isn't anyone. In my webinar, didn't I do it where I had a...
I think we did talk about it. So I would recommend that you go back and look at the previous webinars. And I think I have...
For the trimming that from the sole, if you are unsure of yourself, just take the rasp, fine side, and on Monday, do 1 or 2 swipes across from 10 to 2, and you're going to remove a fraction of the sole and the white line and a little bit of the hoof. Come back in 3 or 4 days, do it again, and you'll get a little bit of confidence. Then you'll start to angle more towards the hoof wall and to the white. The white line is quite thick.
Yep. And I think that's the less is more approach. If you just do a little bit at a time frequently, better than a whole lot.
Because what you allow the inside of the foot to change. That's what you're after. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Wow. All right, Bob, we have blown through just about 2 hours. I think I have one more question. Okay. Would you argue that even barefoot horses should mainly be ridden on softer ground due to vibrations?
So if you can, the vibration is harmful. It really is. And that's why I think I always say shoes are bad, but if you have shoes on a beach, you probably won't get any navicular and all that, because the sand, the ground and everything like that is going to dissipate a lot of the vibration and that sort of stuff.
Yep. All right. Well, Bob, I think you've filled everybody's cup and overflowed that glass of wine, and they're probably going to need 2 or 3.
Straw. You need a straw for the wine. Yeah.
But no, this is great. And I'm going to have to kind of soak on this a little bit too. And we'll need to come back again, of course, and just kind of like review this again when people have had a chance to soak on it. So now that your internet's working, I'll probably come back in about a month. Let everybody kind of soak on it.
Right. And it's nice to have internet. I'd turn it on. I wouldn't know if it would come up or when I'd be gone. It's just that's fabulous. The problem with living in the country. Yeah,
it's really stable, and it's just such a pleasure, and it's so. I mean, I know it's a lot. I kind of feel like I've gone back to college, but it's really good information. And I think it's so important for people to start thinking about how the structures are forming in that foot. And that way they can understand what's going on. So I just want to thank you so much for making yourself available and working so hard to get the internet out to it.
And my own belief, I'm not convinced we're trimming the foot right. I mean, that's just a broad general statement. So it's just for the horse,
People want to know if you're available for consults.
I am. Depends on how many there are. Yes.
Okay. And how can they reach out to you to have a consult?
My internet, my email.
Okay. And that is?
I'm not going to give it out.
Okay. All right. So if they want to get in touch, how do we do it?
It's RMB PhD.
Yep.
Robert@gmail.com. You got it right.
If you're full up, you can just ignore them.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. So we've asked him if he does consultations. The answer is yes, but you're going to have to email him. And, there's going to be a limited number because Bob's got a lot of other things to do. He's going to keep investigating for us. And we'll bring him back again for another really interesting webinar. And like I said, thank you so much, Bob. And just remember, you can review all of these webinars on the Surefoot Equine YouTube channel. So go back and watch his previous webinars again. I think it'll all start to make more sense if you just review it.
You have to keep going over it. Yes, you do.
Yep. And we'll just keep adding to the body of knowledge. So thank you so much, Bob. I'm just really, I put it in the chat. So Rana, go look in the chat to find his email address. And I've got to tune out because I got a 6 o'clock meeting. So I got
Oh, okay, okay, yes.
all right.
The 6
Thanks,
o'clock.
Bob. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, yeah, thank you. All right, yep, bye-bye.
Bye.